right, so we've already got some folks who are on it. QR code. Oh, the next one we're going to set up. Oh,
percentage of young people cite racial or gender identity to explain their motivation to vote for her.
So this came from our teen snapshot that just was recently, or semi-recently released. Not as recent as our Teens and Screens. So if you read it, you would know the answer. But we're just going to give you all a minute to guess. Okay, so most folks are thinking 73% and 32%.
The answer is 82.7.
Yeah, right?
82.7% of Gen Z respondents said that they motivations outside of her race and gender, that they want to vote for Kamala Harris. It's not the only finding we had. We know that Gen Z is more diverse, and so they're also more engaged, and they care a lot more about the world around them and their power to change it. So 30% said they feel very informed on social issues and current events, 26.2% follow news interests, and 27%, see it virally like we all do. You can find more information from our team snapshot in the QR code at the bottom left.
And with that, we have our next Spark Talk, which will be about some of our research with our very own Dr. Alisha Hines, our Director of Research, and Burrus, who is our research coordinator, joined by Maddy Roth from OBB Media. And I believe, do we have a quick video? We do. Yes. All right.
I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I'm a never Trump.
Well, what we really need is a feminine phenomenon. A what? A feminine phenomenon. I'm looking for a man in finance. Trust fund. 6'5", blue eyes. Finance. Trust fund. 6'5", blue eyes.
I am childless. I have cats. I am the biggest nightmare of this J.D. Vance.
If you've got something to say it to my face.
Attention after people remix the audio with songs from singer Charlie XCX's new album, Brat.
At 360, when you're in the mirror, do you know what you see?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
What?
Well, I don't know if this generation, if the younger generation feels that excited about politics until Kamala came along. If you think about it, they've been dealing with these very, very old, not representative of who they are for a long time. And finally, they see someone that looks like them, that, is a person of color. This generation is the most diverse ever. So, as you know, the singer said Kamala is Brat, and then all of a sudden everyone embraced it. And the fact that she embraced it and the campaign just took it on just shows how much she is relating to these younger viewers and also telling them, I'm listening to you. I care about you. I care about what you care about.
Hi, everyone. Yes, another round of applause for that amazing video. You all look so beautiful. Thank you all for being here. I am Alisha Hines, the Director of Research at the Center for Scholars and Storytellers, and I'm here with Burrus, our amazing research coordinator, and Maddy Roth, who's at OBB, and your title is, remind me.
VP of Social Impact.
VP of Social Impact.
An organization called I'm a Voter.
Yes.
Joined by some people.
Which we'll talk about. I met Maddy a couple years ago. Yes, definitely. And I think you were doing something different. Amazing to hear about, what you're doing now. So, again, grateful to have you all here. We're here to talk a little bit about research. Oh, this is a prompter in front of me. Sorry, I'm overstimulated, but I'm very ready to go. Research, media, and the youth vote. And we're going to start by talking a little bit about a recent research report that we released on young voters and Kamala Harris, Gen Z, and what they're thinking about, her nomination as her selection as the Democratic nominee. So for me, honestly, Dustin's comment earlier about feeling kind of far from the 20s really resonated with me because I'm at that place where I'm like, oh wait, are you old now? Like, do people care anymore about what you think? I'm no longer like the center of the universe. But I remember being that age and being so politicized and thinking that my ideas were so important and thinking about the world and making all this meaning of it. So I really have the great privilege now of kind of asking those questions of Gen Z. And so I got to do that with Atlas in this research snapshot. And I wanted to ask a question about identity and Kamala Harris. So as a Black woman, seeing Kamala Harris, at the Democratic National Convention, seeing her last night with Barack Obama, for example, these are really powerful moments for me, right? Like, I'm a millennial, kind of maybe not an elder millennial, but in my lifetime, I didn't necessarily think that this would happen, that this would be the case. And so I wanted to see, if this was resonating with or powerful or profound in the same way for young voters, especially since we know that they are more diverse than ever, living in kind of a different world entirely in terms of the diversity that they see in their everyday lives. And so we decided to ask a question about why young voters were motivated to vote for Kamala Harris, if they indicated that they were. And we found that overwhelmingly, they were not interested in Kamala Harris's identity. So they could choose if they were voting for her because she was a woman or because she was a person of color. And most of them chose other reasons. They agree with her on issues. They like what they see on social media. And so I thought that was a really interesting finding to share with folks, that young people are really interested in issues. They're interested in what matters to them in terms of what they're seeing in their lives and their parents' lives, the crises, many crises that they've lived through and that they're seeing happening in the world. So I wanted to throw a question to Atlas to give us some kind of context and color for this from a Gen Z perspective in terms of how does identity actually matter, and just to kind of tee it up a little bit, because we know that identity is still a part of the conversation, right? Like, reproductive rights is a part of the conversation. We know that in their messaging and, on both sides, identity matters, and that young people are responding based on, in many cases, their identity and their experience that they're having based on their identity. So, Atlas, I don't know if you wanted to share a few words about, your perspective as a Gen Zer and your community and how you all are kind of responding to this and how it relates to, how you show up in the world and how you're receiving these candidates and their messages.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Atlas. As Alisha said, I'm the research manager here at the Center for Scholars and Storytellers, and I am also 22. I'm very much Gen Z, and this election cycle for a lot of people my age, previously before the announcement of Harris's nomination, was just like, oh, awesome. So it's just nothing or worse. And that's how a lot of people in my circles, in my community, were feeling, is just everything about the conversation about politics, especially as a non-binary person, especially as a AFAB person, it felt so removed from the conversation and desensitized, where it was almost useless, because it doesn't matter, those two they don't know who I am. They don't care what my voice is. They don't care the experience of my peers. So going from that just like apathy almost of, yeah, I'm gonna vote for the one that's less bad, duh, to seeing someone who is actually talking about issues, about like making things better again, about like helping with reproductive rights, was so relieving. And because her identity does matter, because it means that she can relate, has experienced things more similarly to me, to my peers. And I think a lot of the opposition to that is trying to make it into identity politics, into her being, well, she's only this because she's a woman of color. That's the only reason any of this is happening. When she's taking so much focus on like what her policies are, what the conversation is, what changes she's going to make. And then again, the opposition is then, I was hanging out with a friend in the Valley, and like Fox Sports was playing, and an ad came on, like a TAC ad for Harris, and it was like, they want to give your money to the liberal they, thems. And I was like, I didn't know they thought I was real. That's actually scarier now. And it was just like the stark realization that they only care about our identities when it's to dehumanize us. Yeah.
And I think just to add quickly to that, also, you know, Kamala going on Call Daddy and Trump kind of engaging in the media blitz that he's done and the people he's trying to reach, these young men, for example, like identity's there, it's like kind of lingering, but I think these paradigms that we have in terms of how we think about identity and how it matters to politics are shifting before our eyes. And so I think we need to understand more about how young people are thinking about their identities, specifically as it relates to gender and racial identity. Maddy, I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about the work, because you've been in this space for a while. So thinking about, you know, your work with I Am a Voter, Civic Alliance, and now OBB, I'm interested in how you see kind of change over time and like some of these shifts that are happening and how you make sense of the moment we're in now as far as Gen Z.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's this misconception that young people are apathetic, or, you know, they don't vote because they don't care and they don't think their voice matters, et cetera. But I think the reality is, right, and we've heard, millennials and Gen Z are the largest voting bloc. It's the most diverse voting bloc ever in history. And we know that young people deeply care about issues, right? Like, they've grown up with climate crisis, they've grown up with gun violence, they've grown up with structural racism, like all these things that have just compounded. But the reality is like, there's still so many structural barriers that exist that make it really hard to vote. Like, it's hard to vote, especially if you're a young person, right? So, you know, it's a lack of civic education, right? Sometimes it's not knowing what ID if you're in college and you're registered elsewhere, right? It's not having like transportation to the polls or not being able to get out of work. So there's these real structural barriers that are in place, and I think where entertainment and media plays such a pivotal role, and that we've really kind of focused on with I'm a Voter, and Carla, who runs our social and all things brilliant content that we do, is really her brain. But it's like, how are we helping to fill that information gap, right, in a way that's resonating with young people? So that looks like partnering, and we did this in 2022, and we did this with OBB, partnering with Hailey Bieber, who has an insanely engaged audience of young women, to not only, you know, film a spot that was played in AMC theaters nationwide, but also like had a real digital strategy to say, you know, this is a very clear call to action. There's an easy way for people to make sure they're registered to vote, then get reminders for their local elections, and connect it to why it's actually important for them, right? Like connecting that piece to, this is what my vote will do, and this is how it has an impact. So I think the information gap, and it's kind of like the more, like literally getting them the information, same with NBA teams is something that we've done that's been a really successful strategy, right? Because what's amazing about NBA teams and players is they have such a local fandom. So we can get really granular about, you know, we're in this state and voting in Arizona looks very different than voting in New York, about what your dates and deadlines are, what voter ID you need. And then so that's kind of one piece, is this information gap piece. And then I think the second piece, which is so unique to this room, is the inspiration piece, right? It's like, how are we introducing the idea of civic engagement and voting behavior and connecting it to your everyday life and community into our content? So, you know, when I was at CA, and I see Dennis here and Meredith and so many people who worked on this, we produced something called the Civic Storylines Toolkit that was working, you know, by format to say, okay, how does like civic engagement show up in unscripted content, right? Like, how does it show up in scripted? So we're creating these worlds and really connecting the idea of voting behavior to the characters themselves. And it's something also, I mean, I think Yalda and the CSS team understand so intimately, is like, we need to actually care what we need to know what young people care about in order to deliver the message in a way that's gonna resonate and gonna really inspire them to vote.
Well, amen. Thank you so much. I'm being told to wrap it up, so that's all we got. Thank you so much.